All right, CNT120, we're looking at our network design lab. After the midterm exam, each module, each chapter class, we try to do a little piece of our network design lab. So the function of this first podcast is I just want to give you an overview of what we're doing, and then I also have a sample to show you so you know kind of where we're aiming when all this is done and pulled together. So what we want to do is we're going to pretend to design a network for a small company. And the first page of our design lab gives you a little bit of idea on network design. We should be designing our networks in some layers. That way our equipment, we're not just kind of grabbing willy-nilly equipment and hooking things up. There is actually a structure to things, almost kind of like, CEO, vice president, regional manager, that kind of thing. There's actually a hierarchy or an organization to it. So the first page gives you a little idea on network design and the network design layers. Our focus of this is really to do a mini network design and try to learn a little bit about how do I do design, how do I communicate that, and the kinds of equipment I would be buying to do a network design. All right, so as I go to the next page, here's some outcomes and what we're going to try to accomplish. The first part of the lab talks about the scenario. What are we trying to design for? Well, we're pretending to design a network or build a network for a small tax consulting company. They contacted us with an RFP, request for proposal, where we designed a network for them. And the next page or two here are little charts of criteria or requirements we have gathered from meeting with the customer. Now, in real life, this kind of information would come from many phone calls, many emails, maybe some conference calls, maybe even some dinner meetings, or gosh only knows, it could be on the golf course sometime. So I'm gathering this information from the customer on what you need, and what I did for you is I took those notes and I put them in little charts so you could organize yourself. So these are charts you're going to reference as you get to different parts of the plan. Well, let me zoom to the end and give you an idea of the facility we're designing for. So let me zoom down a couple pages. You're going to discover that there's a map down here of the facility, and there's another map on the next page. Okay, that's what I'm going to talk about now. I know it's sideways. Okay, I'm going to leave it alone. If I rotate this, all the pages rotate, but we're pretending to network this facility. This is a little office that has a couple different parts to it and a handful of people in each area. So it's like a little mini company on one floor of a building. Maybe the second floor is another company. And we are going to make sure that these different areas of the building have what they need. So if I back up now, each of these areas, lobby, support office, networking closet, office 1, office 2, that sort of thing. If I go back up here, you will notice that there's a chart for each one of those. The exec office, office 1, 2, and lobby need these things. As I go to the next area of my plan, the IT admin office needs these things. The support office needs these things. The wireless LAN needs these things. Okay? So these are referencing the different parts of my building as I look at that. So I'm going to be designing with these criteria for those parts of my building. And I'm going to need to do it in actually, here's a couple more tidbits of information: servers, equipment closet, budget, a timeline, that sort of thing. You'll notice that I'm not trying to hit a certain dollar number at this point, and I'm looking at just a few months down the road that we're going to be implementing this. I do the whole budget thing because I don't want you hung up on the certain dollars of things. We don't need to shop around for the best prices of things. In real life, you would need to, but here we can just pick a piece of equipment and go with it. All right, so that's what we're designing for, that facility, and here's some details of each of those areas. And what do I need to pull together for this thing to submit submit for this lab, if you will, but submit for my customer, if you will? Well, the first thing I need is I need a network diagram. I need a map showing all the equipment and how it's going to be used in this facility. In real life, there would be more information than we're going to put on, but we need to start somewhere. So the first thing is I need a network diagram. Well, when it's finished, it's going to look something like, and I'm going to grab a sample from last semester, it's going to look something like this. I'm going to need to show from the ISP coming in our router and our switches and access points and phones and computers, how they're all getting used and hooked up. This is important. This is the beginning of network design. How are all of our pieces going to get used? And we'll build our way up to that. It's not going to happen immediately. In real life, we'd add additional information on here. We would add things on like VLANs and IP addressing and subnets and those kind of things. But we're going to keep it simple for this one and just show what devices we're using, their model numbers, how they're connecting, and where all the devices are connecting into. So that'll be the first part of our plan, and I will have a separate podcast on how to do this. When we're done, we'll save it as a JPEG or PDF for easy submission. And I even have a program that we can draw it on to make it easy. That's going to be the first part of our plan. The second part of our plan is once we have that design done, we're going to go back and we're going to select the equipment that we need for our plan. So we're going to put that into a little spreadsheet. So again, let me open up a sample from last semester. Here's a sample from last semester where we selected, and I'll zoom this in a little bit, we selected the equipment for this facility, and we put in the different areas, the different model numbers, the quantities of these things, prices, and giving a grand total price. Okay, and again, I'm not really hung up on the grand total price. I'm more interested in you selecting real network equipment, not going to, just a generic website and picking up homeowner gear. No, we're looking for commercial gear for this facility to give them a good solid network. So that'll be the next part of our plan. And again, I'll have a separate podcast on, I don't need to save that. I have a separate podcast on how to do this, either and Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel, showing you how to pull this together. And when we're done, we'll submit this right as our Excel file. We don't need to do anything fancy with it. So that'll be our next part of our plan. So we'll get a map together showing all of our gear, and then we'll have a spreadsheet showing the price of all this gear. The third and last part of our plan, we're going to answer a couple questions about it. So what we're going to do now is, or I should say the third part, we are going to answer a couple questions about our plan. And this would be kind of like preparing for meeting with your customer. We need to be able to answer some things about our plan if we were meeting with a customer in real life or doing a sales pitch for the customer in real life. So I'm going to have you answer with a couple sentences or a paragraph, if you will, the good parts of your plan, the bad parts of your plan, and what you would do. What would you suggest for them to maybe make their idea of their plan better? And that might be something you do now, or it might be something you do with them in a year or two down the road when they have their next pool of money to upgrade their network. And that kind of thing looks something like this. I'll open this guy up. This student opted for kind of the bullet list. That's okay. I'm okay with that too. They came in here and said the advantages of my plan are blah, the disadvantages are blah, and this is what I would do better. I would prefer to see maybe a paragraph or so there, but this gets the job done too. It was okay. But showing what is good, what is bad, and what I would do more or better for the company down the road. That's the third part of our design. And again, I'll have a podcast that I walk you through how to do that, and you'll save this as a .docx file or PDF file for submission to D2L. So there's the three parts that we're going to do. We'll do a map, we'll do a spreadsheet of our gear, and then we'll talk a little bit about our plan. And we'll save these three pieces, and down here I remind you how to submit it to D2L. We're just going to submit those three files right to D2L. So there will be no need to print out or any of that jazz. Okay? So there is a quick overview of, the facility we're working on. In this case, the map down here, the facility we're working on, the parts we need to develop for submission. The last things I'm going to mention for you here are on the next page of our DesignLab. I actually have a copy of the rubric that's on D2L that we're going to use to grade your DesignLab. So this is exactly the criteria we're looking for. We're basically doing 20 points apiece. 20 points for the spreadsheet, spreadsheet, 20 points for your map, and then 20 points for your description. Nice, easy peasy, simple. So when this gets submitted to D2L, I'll be using the grade book or the grade rubric on D2L to grade your submission. If I keep scrolling, this is where I now find the map of the building. And you're also going to find on the next page, this is roughly their network map that they're using for this facility. Now, this seems kind of like weird to have this, but this is I'm sharing this because this is a starting point. The customer is roughly doing this. We're going to kind of retrace their steps. We're going to kind of mimic that. That's okay. That's all right. We're going to kind of mimic this and put our own twist on it. So we end up with a roughly the same structure, but with our own gear. Instead of theirs is nondescript. It just says router switch blah. We're going to do our kind of a copy of that, but adding in our own model numbers of routers, switches, and so forth. So I left that in there because that's kind of a guide of, where am I going? What am I doing? It's okay to kind of like, copy or mimic the first time through. That's how we learn things usually the first time. And then down here at the bottom, the last couple of pages, I even have little cheat sheets on how do you pick out a switch, how do you pick out a router, and how do you pick out the other pieces of our plan. Now, just bear with these directions. The company websites change from time to time, so you might need to improvise a little bit to get there, but this is roughly how you can look up a switch, roughly how you can look up a router, roughly how you can look up a firewall, etc. So I was giving you some cheat sheets down here on how to look this gear up. So there is an overview of your design lab and what we're going to need to do. I will have podcasts on each of these pieces to help you with this.